Welcome, friends, guests, and channel subscribers. Thank you all very much for keeping up with the new episodes and live broadcasts, where we discuss current, important, and very, very pressing issues. Denis Eliseevich, blogger, is here with me now. Welcome, Denis.
Hello.
Friends, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, and for following Denis Eliseevich, for following my channel. Please leave a positive comment, share your thoughts about this broadcast, and don't forget to like, because these are tough times for YouTube itself, since they're trying in every way to cut it off, restrict it, and limit it. Secondly, in general, we understand where things are heading in our country. By our country, I mean Ukraine, right? And because of this, there are a lot of rumors, a lot of them. The live broadcast follows a traditional format. The QR code lets you ask questions and support the channel, and we'll begin the Q&A session with these questions. The same goes for the YouTube community, and the same for the live chat, but at the very end, there's also a poll, and today it's like this. With the continuation of the war at this stage, Zelensky will get a lot. And you're invited to finish the sentence, jackpot, nothing, collapse, or extra time. In general, the votes are almost split. People are unsure. What do you think? The continuation of the war, which was actually approved and blessed by Trump, what does that ultimately give to Zelensky?
Time, the very time of staying in power. But the wording, Trump approved the continuation of the war, isn't quite right. He approved its continuation for Putin. I mean, it's a game for Putin, a bluff against Putin. So, some kind of plan has been agreed upon. There are certain speculations, suspicions, but to say that this will go on for years? No, definitely not.
Indeed, nowadays everyone is talking about tomahawks, everyone is talking about long-range strikes. Sibiga was fired up at the week's start. There won't be a single safe place left in Russia. And everyone clearly sees the pause that has emerged in the negotiation process. A pause that also allows for fighting. What prospects do you see for Ukraine in this war? Because right now, for example, it's very active. For the last hour, well, it's actually been the last few days, but in the last hour we've been hearing about some kind of game changer. A disaster at Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. Grossi comes out and says, well, of course, the diesel generators are working, but this can't go on for long. And basically, the reactors will melt down and there will be a disaster. That's why the Fukushima scenario hasn't been ruled out. But it feels like that's exactly what Zelensky wants, don't you think?
I don't think it will ever be brought to such a catastrophe. I don't believe in any such super catastrophic parallels. I can say that's what makes war so frightening in general. That's when people start talking about tomahawks, and it starts to smell like a catastrophe at the Zaporizhzhia plant. We can discuss Zelensky for the 1000th time, but what's happening is happening. Look, I don't believe that Trump will give the go-ahead for tomahawks. It's a complex missile that's hard to launch without American involvement. As far as I've studied the issue, I'm not an expert in this. If the Americans get involved in this, it could already be considered as participation in the war. Well, Russia usually tries to present it that way, and that's basically it. I don't believe that about 95%. If I'm wrong, there's a 5% chance those strikes will occur. Then it's absolutely clear that this is a plan to, well, how should I put it, to politically destabilize Putin. If you imagine a tomahawk landing somewhere in Moscow or St. Petersburg, that would be a huge blow to Putin. But, you know, I personally might be happy about it for 5 minutes, but the next 5 minutes I realize it will only strengthen Zelensky's power. That's why I'm for ending the war, for diplomacy without all these stories. Besides, I know that if it hits there, I understand what will happen tomorrow in Kyiv. And many people are happy saying, let's use tomahawks and show them. I get that Trump acts on his own goals, but when people here say, let's hit them with tomahawks now, it's different. But you're sitting there with little or no air defense. Have you considered that? Sadly, they haven't.
Well, Zelensky seems to be sitting under good air defense and his bunkers are reliable, so he doesn't really worry about that. Today is Defenders' Day in Ukraine. Zelensky came to Maidan, laid flowers, and actually said a very interesting phrase about how, oh, Ukraine erases empires. No one has ever defeated it. Well, look, I don't want to take the historical context, I want to. Exactly, this message, this new message of power, To be honest, it's absolutely unclear where Zelensky got such a surge from. Because when you look at Europe, well, everything there is still kind of shaky and uncertain. Yeah? Ursula announced 4 billion today, with 2 billion for drones. This story with PURRL, yeah, this program where countries chip in. Well, 6 countries chipped in 2 billion. And in this past month, September, they didn't add anything, so that's August's money. You can't really say they're rushing and stumbling, running to help Ukraine either. Their drones have been flying there. They should keep something for themselves. So it's kind of unclear what Zelensky's calculation is here. What can you say about that?
I can only repeat what we've discussed, what I told you a couple of months ago. Zelensky doesn't live by long-term goals and objectives, for example, like Trump does, who obviously plans until the end of his term, and in life, he plans for decades. All Americans do too. Zelensky and Yermak will plan for next month. If they make it, that's great. Europe is helping as it has since the war began, just enough for Ukraine to avoid losing, but not enough to win. Ukraine is taking on a lot of debt and obligations, and all of this is basically happening through Zelensky, who one day will no longer be the president of Ukraine, but the obligations will remain in Ukraine. Of course, you can declare an external default, and honestly, that's exactly what I would do. That's another question, but we have what we have right now. Regarding the emotional speeches on Maidan, you mentioned Sybiga earlier. Honestly, Sybiga is insignificant, and his name carries no weight. He comes out and says things like, they'll be hiding there in Moscow or somewhere else. That's 5 minutes of satisfaction for the average Ukrainian. But where will Sybiga be at that moment? In a bunker. And somewhere in response, a child will die, our people, someone will lose their property. I would make these statements more modestly, even if it was planned and Trump agreed to do it. Well, all right. But to present it so pompously, honestly, I think that's just vile towards people.
Another point is interesting. Right now, everyone is saying that Zelensky has no money. Various experts, well-known ones, come out and say, look, Ukraine has a cruise missile, Neptune, right? But there's no way to produce it. There's no money. Well, they launched some prototype or something else. As for Flamingo, they say it's just a story on paper. Quite, well, very, very abstract, you know? Flamingo, Flaminich, Fairpoint, which are under scandals with National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. In general, it's a company close to the president. And in fact, some people clearly say that this is a cover operation. Take some missiles, some unaccounted ones from friendly countries, launch them, and say that this is our Flamingo. However, today the Russians published an interesting video where, as they claim, trucks were hit. Military cargo disguised as civilian trucks is no longer secret. This war uses residential buildings and other civilian areas, so everyone is used to it. This is not a sensation, but they say that Flamingo was being loaded and transported there, specifically Flamingo. Listen, is there a Flamingo or not? Or is it a bird that is very wonderful and doesn't live in Ukrainian latitudes?
The most I can believe in is some kind of one-off production, but I don't believe there is any serial production. The question arises, if the Flamingo has such wild claims, why is the Tomahawk there? Besides the Flamingo, they also recently showed some other scary missiles. I can't even remember the name. If you search Google or use AI, you'll see Zelensky has claimed since 2023 that they'll build 3,000 cruise missiles, many ballistic ones, and 1 million drones, but none of that exists. Right away, what comes to mind is a recent speech by General Kellogg, who was saying, I walked around the drone production facilities, they showed me everything, it was fantastic. There is some truth to that. Today, Ukraine, and unfortunately Russia, are world leaders in these cheap drones. This is a drone war. General Kellogg spoke with such emotion, as if current events in Ukraine mirror Israel's struggles during its tough times. People were building airplanes in garages to help the country survive. General Kellogg knows where the funding comes from and how it's stolen. Does he know about this?
Yes, he's involved, Dennis.
I can't claim that. I can only say this is the case.
No, wait, everything is clear. He has assets, assets in manufacturing, military. His daughter is involved in activities related to the military. Well, activities connected to the war in Ukraine. Everything is kind of open. It's basically an open secret.
Well, that's what I was getting at. An American or European listening to General Kellogg from the outside would think, well, everything in Ukraine is really fine. And how people argue with me. Zelensky is a Democrat, that's it. I'm not like that, which I see as a big problem. General Kellogg is the only member of Trump's team I can't stand. After such statements, after he comes out and says, Russia will not defeat Ukraine, I agree, but then the next question is, will Ukraine defeat Russia? Well, by military means, that's what's implied. No, then let's talk about diplomacy, but to come out and say that Russia will not defeat Ukraine, so does that mean we should fight endlessly? General Kellogg got on a plane, flew to America, and one day his daughter will do the same from Kiev. If the info you mention is true, cheats should make everything fine. That's all, and if you take it all together, Sibiga, Zelensky, General Kellogg, now you're talking about missiles, about those Tomahawks. Let's imagine this happened. We were given those Tomahawks, we fired them, and then tomorrow a response comes. Does this help end the war? Hardly. If the real plan is to strike Moscow so hard that it shakes Putin politically, that's a very ambitious plan. But, I can't help but come back to this question again. So does that mean Zelensky will come out of this as a hero? And here, of course, naturally, I'm for Ukraine. But Zelensky, he's been doing this since the very first day of the war. But maybe from the second month, it happened fast. He wants to win alone. Why did people like me end up outside Ukraine? He only cares about winning by himself, not what you've done for the front or the people. Are you with me? If not, you're against us. And now, unfortunately, there might be a situation where he awards himself additional medals. Look at what a handsome guy I am. So, I support Ukraine, but maybe Zelensky will need to be dealt with later, or I hope Trump's team will remove him. There are talks going around that these tasks are divided, like ending the war with damage to Russia is task number 1. But that doesn't mean we'll keep promoting Zelensky there in any way. Well, like the story, he's a son of a bitch, but right now he's our son of a bitch, and later he won't be ours anymore. That's the only thing I might be counting on.
And why would Trump need that?
What exactly?
Well, to cause significant damage to the Russian Federation. I'm not talking about the United States right now. I'm not talking about the West. My question is clear. Why would Trump need that?
Why do you separate Trump and the United States? Trump is the United States.
Judging by the shutdown, not really.
We can talk about this separately, but I don't separate Trump from the United States because Trump acts in the interests of the United States. And for the United States, the main geopolitical enemy is China. The second is Russia, because Russia is an ally of China, and of course, weakening China and weakening Russia is an important task.
Once again, Trump looked completely confused when he was retelling yet again about his meeting in Anchorage with Putin. Why was he confused? He says, "We had a good meeting, and then drones started flying over Kyiv, but we had a good meeting, right? So what's the problem?" What's most interesting is that this meeting was on August 15th. Well, enough time has passed, and it's starting to get surrounded by all sorts of peculiar things. I immediately draw parallels and compare it to Geneva. Many so-called brilliant analysts there, remember? Geneva, Biden met with Putin, and then it all started.
Right.
Let's try to figure this out. What political consequences has this meeting brought about now, and what will happen next? Everyone is already saying that Trump will be pushed and, so to speak, will hit Russia. The question is, will he really do it? Others simply say that this is just a game he's playing. He mentioned the paper tiger again. He did it again. Well, that's all there is to it. Yeah, I mean, we're the coolest there. We have the coolest submarines. Medvedev is dumb because he wrote about nuclear stuff, and we immediately sent submarines, 1 or 2, doesn't matter, to the shores of Russia. So we see that Trump is on a different track now than he was, say, a month or 2 ago.
Yes, of course. Well, first of all, really, you said at the beginning that Trump is confused. But in my opinion, Trump and confusion are two incompatible words. I've never seen him confused in my life, and I've been watching him for at least 15 years. So it's indeed Trump took the whip, but I also think that this is kind of a game. Yesterday, Minister of Defense Hexet addressed the generals and made many important, serious statements. The same applies to Trump's claim that America is 25 years ahead of China and Russia in submarines. He says China is catching up, which is true, but the gap remains huge. Correct, Trump tried, as I said. Trump tried to do business like a civilized person, but he realized that he was dealing with uncivilized people who only understand the language of force. He agreed and renamed the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of War, beginning to demonstrate force, military included, to show that if that's what you want, it can be done, but it won't end well for you. This is also called coercion to peace. It's also an element of this story.
Today, a video spread around. Russian political pranksters Vervin and Lexus. They talked to Samantha Power, the former head of United States Agency for International Development. So during the conversation, she clearly said that every month Ukraine received $1.5 billion, as she put it, in cash. Well, that means the money was physical. If it was in cash, then, excuse me, people who know about this are right to conclude that it was almost specially printed or taken out of storage. Well, that needs to be replenished. It's actually the opposite. That is specifically $1.5 billion in cash per month, and this went on for quite a long time. For the budget, pensions, and gaps, where the money remains unclear, so they made rough estimates. Just under Biden, that's 50 billion. That's how it is. Well, And remember this argument? Trump brought it up during the election campaign. How much did they spend? He says 300 billion, but Kiev claims 157. That's it. They argued for a while, then everyone went quiet to avoid making things worse. Statement by Samantha Power. What are the United States bringing to the topic of supporting Kiev right now?
Well, Vovan and Lexus are talented guys, but they are definitely agents of the Federal Security Service or the main directorate of the General Staff, which doesn't take away from the value of what they've done, even for me, since United States Agency for International Development is a very important topic for me. I even asked people here about this. In the context of Ukraine, when Trump's team came in, people here became very interested in this. And now basically it all continues. What I heard in the short clips on X, well, on the former Twitter I found this morning, my time, I wasn't exactly shocked. Finally, this has come out into the public sphere. And so people probably, well, Ukrainians most likely won't take this from me. But I want to say actually, these Federal Security Service guys did a job for Ukraine because all of this harms Ukraine. All these groups, United States Agency for International Development, Power, Soros and others, cause harm. Now everything about the money is clear. Imagine Power walks in with a notebook and says, okay, $1.5 billion, sign here to get it. Of course not. They took it from their cash, billions were stolen, and at most 500 million reached the cause. Do you agree with that? That's where all the beauty they have comes from. And then they proudly walk out saying, businessman, I'm a businessman. That's what their business is. And you know what the mystery is for me? People like Power and others like him, do they really believe what they're saying? As she says, investments in Ukraine, in democracy. Where's the democracy if they've cut off all the media with this funding? I'll repeat, even without the war, if I broadcast like this in Ukraine, I'd be marginalized and exiled. Exactly the same since they only accept themselves. Well, at that time, there were still pre-war oligarchs, thank you, period. Where is the democracy here? Where is the democracy when, if someone they don't like comes to power, elections are cancelled, like it was in Romania, and now in Moldova, it's 100% in the parliamentary elections. If this party, as I call it, Savkov's party, had won, I was against both sides, then what would have happened? They would have said it was bad falsifications. She calls Maya Sandu a reformer. What is one reform Maya Sandu has implemented in Moldova? She hasn't done any of them. I started calling her Zelensky in a skirt about a year ago, so that's being a Democrat. Also, Maya Sandu is censoring things in Moldova. You hear this and wonder, how did we get here? I want people to know this is what this power is saying. This has nothing to do with classic America. This is the leftist stuff brought by the Democrats, and now it's become associated. America the West. This isn't America or the West, it's the radical left. And I won't say who else, but the real value of America is Trump and his team and their ideology.
Will a shutdown create more problems or benefits for Trump? What do you think?
You don't have to view it as problems or benefits. This has happened before, including recently and during Trump's last term. It's just a phase. I support Trump's goals to cut unnecessary funding and reduce expenses. It's the right thing to do. Of course, the Democrats don't agree with that. Naturally, it's a political process. Well, yes, a shutdown. It'll be over in a week or two. Well, that's how it is.
Well, the hegemon, the government isn't working. Officials are on unpaid leave. It's a real problem.
No, in our understanding, maybe that's how it is. But here they don't see it that way. Moreover, the defense industry is functioning, the military sector is functioning, but this doesn't extend to everything. So there's nothing catastrophic. Here I am now, everything is working, everything is alive, everything is open, no one is convulsing, America is living. Yes, by the way, that's also called democracy.
These debts are outrageous, don't you think?
Yes, I think they'll figure it out somehow.
No, well, there was this shaman, I forgot his name, the one who took the capital, the one Trump pardoned. He sued everyone in the world. Everyone. Almost Warner Brothers, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Reserve System, Trump. He sued him too. He sued everyone. Apparently he's peculiar. He claims they made him communicate with spirits there. And among his list of demands, he has 3 demands, or maybe 2. He discussed rights and the original United States Constitution, suggesting a return to it without all the amendments and extras. Yes, people like that are called the town crazy, but in every madness there is a bit of madness. He also suggested issuing a $40 trillion coin to cover the national debt. Well, you see, the United States has a problem with the national debt.
No, this problem does exist. For example, I personally support the views of Elon Musk, who has raised concerns about the national debt in the long term. And I also share this point of view. Why am I calm about this? America leads the world by far. Under Trump, I believe gross domestic product will reach $30 trillion, with huge investments coming in and the dollar stable. Very serious. Trump's team is reportedly considering using cryptocurrency to pay the national debt. Trump has leaders working in this direction, and during 2026 a lot of important things will happen regarding this, so I'm just calm. America won't disappear.
Hegseth's speech and then Trump's speech in front of the generals is an amazing story. First of all, it all looked like some kind of performance, a stand-up show. Hegseth, as the warm-up act, said things that just yesterday, literally, we couldn't have imagined. So, no inclusivity, none of that long hair, not even beards. If you want a beard, go to the special forces where there are fat generals. That's not about the American army. Everyone has to meet the standards, everyone has to be fit and clean-shaven. And he wants to demonstrate the power of the American army, even through its appearance. Well, then Trump came out too, basically added his own power to the mix, talking about nuclear facilities and submarines. So let's not retell it. There are 2 main questions left about yesterday's event. Question number 1 about the event. So how will America even handle this change in ideological course? And question number 2. So, what is the American army preparing for, if they're even focusing on the appearance of soldiers?
I noticed that when Trump shook hands with Putin in Alaska, you spoke quite positively about Trump. As soon as there's any confrontation, you make careless comments about Trump like he poured his strength into his hat. But if strength were actually tested, Russia wouldn't stand a chance. But I don't want it to come to that. I wouldn't want that. Let's just have everyone come to an agreement, and let's not throw such things at each other. As for gender-related issues...
Wait, but you do agree that Trump was showing off yesterday at the event in front of the generals, right?
Absolutely, but I don't think that's just showing off.
When you have people sitting there, people on whom everything depends, even the future of the planet, people who have that button that you kind of press, but it comes out because he's a general, and he says, so you don't like it? Stand up and leave. Get out of here, you bandit. That's basically what Trump was saying to his generals. Well, if you don't like what I'm saying, you'll lose your positions, you'll be out of this. And in short, he was really pretty tough with them. He was putting a lot of pressure on them. He was really tearing those generals apart yesterday.
Almost word for word. I'll have a meeting with the generals, and if I don't like any of them, they'll be fired on the spot.
No, that's before, but at the actual meeting he said, if you don't like what I'm saying, you can stand up and leave, and you'll lose your future and everything else. So he said it twice.
Yes, that's right, you're saying. So, except for the Panama hat. So what was that? That was, again, a demonstration of strength. If uncivilized people want it by military means, they will get it. What does ideology mean? If you want to be a general who is overweight, just in words, if what I did doesn't suit you, I would say the same thing as a general in Ukraine if I were the president of Ukraine. But how? What happened? They were bringing transgender people and men in skirts into the army. China and Russia were mass-producing missiles and ammunition. China is also mass-producing submarines, airplanes and helicopters. With just incredible numbers, I saw how fast everything was moving, and here they were busy with nonsense. Now we have what we have. Russia is fighting in Ukraine, and it's not very willing to go for peace. China is again threatening Taiwan and will almost certainly attempt a military takeover within 2 or 3 years. This topic is now a top focus in Trump and Xi Jinping's talks, as Xi is urging Trump to hand over Taiwan. We've agreed on all other issues. That's what's happening. Now Trump has to restore order, he has to keep real, true generals. The military must understand the situation, and Russia and China should realize it's better not to force this outcome, for their own sake. Not just for Ukraine, but generally speaking.
Look, General Kellogg, is that the image of an American general?
General Kellogg is a real general with combat experience, by the way, with heroic deeds during the war, actually, as a military man on the battlefield. I pay tribute to General Kellogg's past achievements. When I'm discussing his current statement, actions, his daughter's actions, and more, I'm not sure if it's representative. General Kellogg is on Trump's team because he's been with Trump since the first term, and he's one of the few who hasn't betrayed him. If you remember the situation after the first term, when everyone abandoned him like he was a leper, General Kellogg was one of those who stayed. That's probably the only reason he's on Trump's team now. And to provide a second point of view, unlike Zelensky, Trump listens to many points of view and makes decisions, while Zelensky just needs a comfort zone. That's what's happening.
The reason I'm asking about General Kellogg is, do you get the impression that it's Kellogg and people like him who will be the only ones left around Trump now? I mean, not just outwardly, but specifically with that position. There are rumors that Witkoff will leave. What do you think will happen?
I don't think so. I think the team lineup will stay about the same. It's just that first there was plan A, then plan B. Some things work, some things don't. Recently they admitted, I think by the way it was Kellogg who said this, that they don't use the concept of red lines anymore, but they used to at first. But what kind of red lines can there be with Putin? If he makes a deal, he doesn't keep it. That's how it is. Why did Trump say, in 2 weeks, remember, in 2 weeks we'll make a decision, or in 3 weeks we'll do this? They began joking, comparing it to your usual guest and those few weeks. So if Putin doesn't follow through, if a businessman, a business-minded person, a head of state makes an agreement with another, it's kind of implied, especially if you've known him for a long time, that he'll keep his word, but he doesn't. That's why the decision was made. No more red lines and we will act differently. That's why the generals are acting so tough, to show their intentions, among other things.
So, did Zelensky do what he says he did?
Zelensky didn't start it at first, and everyone there knows what he's capable of. Now he's trying to play along. I saw something about the Nobel Prize in the stream topic, so in the title, that's part of the story too. Well, first of all, just consider his intelligence. If you want to play along, then do it from the very beginning, without a scandal in the Oval Office. They just now decided, let's go for the Nobel Prize, after Aliyev, Pashinyan, Netanyahu, and everyone else. All I can do is laugh at this. It looks ridiculous. Deep down they hate it, I know that. And yet they're initiating a Nobel Prize, and then Skorokod comes to me, and I just can't figure it out anymore. First, she criticizes Zelensky, then she's among those nominating Trump for the Nobel Prize. Well, in short, I don't know.
Well, really, everything is mixed up, you know? And it's the same with those. Who's Russian? Who's pro-Russian? Who's Ukrainian? Who's pro-Ukrainian? Who's for Zelensky? Who's against him? Everything is mixed up now. And there's a certain confusion because there's no clear understanding. What do you think? Today, Peskov made several statements there, including about negotiations. Vance over the weekend. Yes, that information came out on Sunday. He went on television and said that basically Putin refused, well, that is, further negotiations, and he was offered meetings in a bilateral format, in a trilateral format. Moscow is now speaking through Peskov, saying that it's actually Zelensky who isn't eager to hold negotiations, so that's why nothing is happening and everything is on pause right now. So how do you see the purpose of this chaos that's happening right now? Well, the wave of chaos that Trump personally started, yes, it's happening now. Many people there have changed their views, some haven't, and others just talk nonsense to say something. All this just begins the negotiation process. The one that got stuck in Istanbul or some other one, or is this not about negotiations at all? And what if the key is in this message, like let's have Putin and Zelensky sit down and talk? Well, that's what I'm saying. We're strong, otherwise they wouldn't even pick up the phone from us. But we are strong. That's close to the text. I'm quoting Trump. That's why we're able to get Putin and Zelensky to sit down at the negotiating table. The immediate question is, for what purpose? And what's the plan? What's the next step?
Information gets outdated fast, but from what I know about Vance's latest speech, it seems like the sticking point is that if Ukraine agrees to exchange territories, that's Zelensky's compromise. But then what's the compromise from Russia? That's the whole story. Well, as I said, information becomes outdated quickly. Maybe I'm wrong now, but that's how it was. As for everything else, you say that everyone is confused, changing their views. Some people have changed their stance. Personally, I don't do that intentionally. I understand Trump's actions, but I also understand what the consequences might be. So pumping up Zelensky with power is very bad for Ukraine, for the Ukrainian people. I'll say something harsh now. If Zelensky is pumped up with too much power, then basically millions of Ukrainians won't care about the outcome. Because they don't want to live under the Russians like me, or under a powerful Zelensky, who would oppress Ukraine, create a dictatorship, and rule authoritatively. That's why by then those who've left will go and the rest of us will leave too. Meanwhile, you're building yourself up with or without power and everything else. But Sasha, I knew it would be like this. I said so. Some thought, after shaking hands with Putin, he'd keep his promise the next day. Of course not. I said it every broadcast. He'll drain your blood and wear out your nerves. Why is dealing with Zelensky easier? There are many levers of pressure on him, but Trump doesn't need to use them yet.
An important point, I think, in this regard, well, regardless of how you answer the options, that is, yes, about the trilateral meeting. About Istanbul, has it been very for good?
That was a very long question, yes. And this is done for negotiations. This is done for negotiations. As far as I know, Lukashenko is bending over backwards to organize a decisive meeting in Minsk, and these negotiations are still ongoing. Lately, I've been leaning this way. I was asked about it on air yesterday. I used to prefer Vienna or Geneva, but now I lean toward Minsk.
Bad associations. With Minsk, 1-2.
I don't live by associations. You know, it always comes down to people, to their actions, and as for this symbolism, I'm kind of indifferent to it. I don't take it very seriously. They also tried to hold it in Budapest.
We're seeing some very strange things with the elections. So there's some kind of insider info that today, October 1st, all these headquarters are shutting down, no elections. Zelensky, excuse my language, has said his piece, said there will be a ceasefire, there will be elections, we're ready. As soon as the war ends, I'll step down. That's what he said. I mean, he can say whatever he wants, and apparently that's the insider info. That's it. So, no elections, we're going to strike Moscow, they'll strike us, they'll cut off our electricity, and we'll cut off theirs. Nowhere in Russia is safe. It's very intense. However, on October 1st, my subscribers from Ismail, one person actually went outside and took a photo himself on his own phone. They're putting up a brand new fresh sign, a fresh little banner, you know, the kind, there used to be stores there selling laundry detergent, but now there's no household chemicals. That store in the residential building is gone now. Servant of the people, party office. Wait, from the first of the month, there's nothing, like all the elections are over. Now there are no elections. He kind of told his Western partners, friends, and curators that he's ready for elections, but then he cancelled the whole thing. So why are they putting up that sign in Ismail? So this topic is interesting. They keep releasing ratings, and naturally opinions vary. Here's Zelenskyy. Today, the Member of Parliament published that if there's a second round between Zelensky and Zaluzhny, in short, Zaluzhny wins. And they keep running around with these charts. What do you think about the elections? Did Zelensky refuse to hold them? Is he just pretending, putting on a show, or is he really pretending that he refused? In reality, he has a clear, deadline or time frame or some kind of directive that they must take place.
What he said in the Axios interview was just playing to the public, a political trick to calm the wave against him, to show how easily he can say, "I'm not clinging to power. I'm leaving anyway, just let's finish the war, I'm leaving." Of course, no one really believes this drama. And about October 1st, you say, I knew nothing would happen this year, even back in May, and now it can be said for sure. By law, elections must start 90 days after the announcement, which is January 1st, but that doesn't work out. There are also rumors from the president's office about preparing for elections in spring 2026. I'm not sure what the plan is, just keep the war going and hope it works out, though I can't picture it. They kept yelling, how can you do this during a war? Elections are impossible. Either they know that everything is moving towards some kind of agreement, and Trump is demanding elections because it's Trump. Whenever they visited, he made public jabs and privately insisted, you must hold elections and get a mandate from the people or not. That's the kind of conversation that's going on, as far as I know. They're getting ready. About Ismail, this headquarters or campaign point, what should we call it? All over Ukraine, my subscribers send me messages, and they constantly receive Servant of the People newspapers in their mail. And let's not forget another thing that I was told about 3 months ago. Honestly, I hadn't even thought about it. So, if he's told not to run for president, he'll say, all right, I won't run for president. What would stop him from trying a trick like Poroshenko's? Party leader running for office. Well, the party leader and the faction can get into parliament. We have enough fools who can get them into parliament. I'm talking about those who will vote for all this. I don't rule that out either. It's clear to me you're obsessed with power and politics, and he won't step down. He often mocks people like Lukashenko and Putin for holding power for 25 years. Old people are talking, you're following the same path, just ahead of schedule. This is just another act of meanness and hypocrisy.
Today is a significant day for Ukraine. Today we've got a new brigadier general, and he's also on the president's ranking list. Zelenskyy. A brigadier general is commanding a corps. Can you imagine that? So, if you look back, for those who have been following Ukrainian politics for a long time, trans-conflict, trans-military, meaning not linked to military actions in Donbass since 2014 or the current conflict. But this is such a frenzied just a takeoff, plus a gold star for Poklad from the security service of Ukraine. The one who was choking, grabbing, basically working to the limit, as they say, and about whom there are also things to be said. At the same time, well, you can't really say that he's exactly a Western appointee. Well, let me use this term in relation to National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and to the people who started working in that organization thanks to the United States of America. And of course, he handed out the title of Hero City in batches. Orkhiv suddenly became a hero city, and Kupiansk too, 2/3 of which are currently not under control and in ruins. Tell me, it's clear that Zelensky always loves a celebration. He's held 100,000 celebrations, birthdays, all kinds of funerals, all sorts of events, christenings, even his dog's birthday. I mean, all kinds of things too, like what wealthy people have. But to give City Day to the hero city of Kupiansk, which is about to be lost, to award a rather questionable figure from the Defense Forces of Ukraine the Hero Star, and to promote Brigadier General Zelenskyy, well, that's really something else. It feels like, there's that saying, the closer the end of an empire, the more foolish its laws become. These actions are similar, like taking one last deep breath before death. What do you think about today's appointments, decisions, and decrees by Zelensky?
Honestly, I learned about this from you. It's morning here and I haven't read the news yet, but I can say it's easy to explain. So, regarding Kupiansk, it's just showing off in front of people. I've always told you, Zelensky is a Soviet type, and he acts just like the communists did, calling white black, doing things like that. Yermak is exactly the same. That's their mentality, that's how they live. It's for the people. As for Poklad, he can't stay without Security Service of Ukraine support, so it's to please the special services. It's not about Poklad personally. I'd say the same about anyone in his place, including Beletsky. Well, radical nationalists who might be connected to something like United States Agency for International Development or Soros. Funding came from somewhere and people appeared from nowhere. Many, according to their biographies, have never worked a day in their lives. Now it turns out, somehow this happened. It's not fantasy, not miracles. It happened somehow again, without being tied to a specific person. I can name 6 or 7 last names with differing information. That's all. Now things are good with the Security Service of Ukraine, and with the radical nationalists, or professional radical nationalists, everything is good for me. And for the people, Kupiansk. But it's evening, so there will be drones and missiles across Ukraine, unfortunately.
Well, they're reporting now we're live. It's 1744 Kiev time, and literally about 40 minutes ago the power was cut off in the city of Slavutich, which is in the north of Kiev region. It became known in the Kiev region. The mayor of the city reported that the city was left completely without power because the substation was hit. Accordingly, we will be witnessing this blackout. But still, the benefits of this blackout for Zelensky, politically speaking, are invaluable. Again, to show the West, look at how the Ukrainian people are suffering. What kind of barbarians are fighting against us? People are freezing and so on and so on and so on. Plus, it's also a very good reason to revive these invincibility points, right? And people themselves will go to these invincibility points. There will be a territorial defense guy near each point, and that's fine, and it's kind of a win, fishing in troubled waters. That's the kind of disaster strategy that seems likely in the near future. How do you assess it? Well, what about the long-term prospects of these claims? Because people, of course, endure for a long time, but nothing is unbreakable. And, for example, the territorial recruitment centers are already resisting everywhere as best they can, wherever there are crowds of people. Where they can't, they don't resist. But nevertheless, when people end up somewhere, they run away from these training camps, they escape from the front lines, they break the law, which is wrong, but they shouldn't have been there in the first place. The corruption in this process is insane. This is yet another way to make money, and can you understand what Zelensky is making money on?
Honestly, I haven't even thought about that, and I don't want to count his money, whether it's earned or made during the war. We can call it that. I don't know. I know that people like him, not just with money, with power, with everything, they simply can't stop. I don't remember if it was Politico or The Economist that wrote that someone from his inner circle described him as someone who believed in destiny. You understand what I mean? One day he just woke up. I am chosen by God for an important mission. And so, if a couple of billion stick to me and to Yermak, just saying hypothetically, then it's nothing terrible. It's all for the good of the mission. But I'm a good person, and that's how he reassures himself, and people like him do the same. I think Putin thinks exactly the same way. I'm just a special person too, and I have an important mission. And that's how one person thinks over here, and another person thinks over there.
Will the war end by the end of the year?
No, but there might be a serious decline in combat activity.
Well, without an official truce...
Yes, of course, yes. This definitely won't happen in 2025, in 2026. That's exactly at the beginning, the first, well, at most the second quarter. According to the plan, that's how it should be.
Well, a decline in military activity means a decline in funding. a decline in resource capabilities, a decline in money and cash in the president's office, without a doubt.
Yes, and then they might even say, go ahead and hold elections, guys. In the spring.
If not Zelensky, then who?
I won't tell you the last name because we can't even guess together, can we? You can't tell me either. I can't guarantee what the election process will be like. Will it be similar to Moldova's, for example? At least even though I don't like them, the opposition was allowed to run. And everything happened somehow over there.
Well, it happened badly, yes.
What?
Well, it was going badly.
It was going poorly, but at least something was happening. Still, the pro-Russian party with the Red Star gained a lot. In Ukraine, I don't even believe in that kind of scenario. What's happening in Moldova would be called super democracy in Ukraine. There's no point guessing who will come to power, but I'm definitely against Zelenskyy. He's also United States Agency for International Development, and if he wins, the whole United States Agency for International Development team comes with him. And then we're right back where we started 10 years ago. And in short, then it's just pointless for me to go on air and discuss all this. And if we're being real, then some names will come up that many people don't even expect to see right now. Trust me, this will lower the ratings of Zelensky, Zelenskyy, and everyone else being discussed. The whole thing is just ridiculous. And if they want to bring truly radical people to power, you probably understand who I'm talking about, then there's nothing to talk about either. It's simple here. You claim people are outraged somewhere. Yes, there are some shootings, but for a country as large as Ukraine, I think it is a very submissive nation, oppressed by dictator Zelensky. That's my view on life and the situation, though others may disagree. Yes, something came up here, something came up there, something came up elsewhere, but on a large scale, it's nothing. And I think people will endure the blackout and everything else. I'm not saying people should take to the streets. You know what worries and concerns me? A very high percentage of people, even in private conversations, can't tell white from black. I mean, this is good and that is bad. They believe in some kind of fairy tale, in some propagandists, still in propaganda, some more, some less. But for someone to say, no, this is all going in the wrong direction and we need something completely different. That's a very small percentage of people who can say that.
You see, the thing is, about the propagandists, well, I already think that people are tired of it. It's become old and annoying. Well, for example, Gordon comes out and says that Russia won't be able to hold on to the occupied territories. Yesterday was, by the way, two very interesting days. It was the anniversary of the referendums that Russia held in parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia. And of course, they also added the Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic to that. So they made it a kind of unification day. That's one day, and the other day is Babin Yar, the shootings, a day of remembrance. Zelensky modestly appeared, laid flowers or something. These were two truly historic days. When people try to understand, the essence of this propaganda, he says that there won't be enough strength to hold the occupied territory. He says it's just rubble and stones, meaning nobody needs it. This makes no sense, but at the same time, according to Gordon's logic, yes, Russia is still moving forward, they're not stopping the fighting, they're advancing, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Everyone ignores the Dnipropetrovsk region. People keep repeating that Russia will collapse, and others just keep believing it. Gordon's popularity and recognition counter keeps ticking there. He's going all out. Power, super. But in reality, nothing is changing, nothing is happening, and everything is just rolling in one direction. So how do you assess it? Have Ukrainians already had enough of this kind of propaganda, or when, for example, Gordon does it again? That's just an example. There are many like that. It's not because Eliseevich and I are sitting here discussing Gordon. No, there are many who say, look, they live out there in the Russian countryside, in barracks with outhouses. But propagandists love this. They love to say they have nothing there, everything is falling apart. Infrastructure, yeah, for crying out loud. Did you see Odessa yesterday? It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace for the city authorities. It's a disgrace for the infrastructure. Yeah, they had 2 months worth of rainfall there. No one could have handled it, but if your storm drains were cleaned, the consequences wouldn't have been so severe. If the weather forecast shows you need sandbags or a barrier, you have some work to do. And our infrastructure, just like in Odessa, seems to be tidied up only in the city center. But in the provinces, it's a mess, really. In the provinces, everything is falling apart. the cultural heritage, all those buildings, they're collapsing. And on top of that, that's the situation, but we keep blaming Russia for everything. When a Ukrainian gets enough of this and tries to look into their own water pipe, the storm drain, the sewage, I don't know, under the roof, and so on and so on.
Are we really going to discuss people who... Did you see that video preview? People constantly send me things like yesterday's claim. All the Tomahawks have been launched. They're heading to Moscow. The Kremlin is burning. Putin is dead. It's like the 55th round. Happens 20 times daily. I can't seriously discuss this. You ask if people will get tired of this? Ukrainians and Russians won't. Every propagandist's job is to discuss another country, not their own, unlike me. In Russia, it's Ukraine. They discuss Ukraine and America in exactly the same way. And the decaying West, as they say, while in Ukraine, they discuss Russia. That's why Skobiva Solovyov equals Gordon, and Gordon equals Solovyov Skobiva. That's it. Nothing serious to discuss. They'll talk about this for years. Sasha, if you're asking, they'll keep eating this up for years to come. That's the level of civil society, I don't know, education, self-respect, and most importantly, love of freedom. Yes, love of freedom. I don't see that. I see that people need a master. Those people need a master, and these people need a master too. Freedom is harmful for them. They can't handle it.
Today, footage came in from Tel Aviv airport, where a Ukrainian transport plane, an Antonov 124, is being loaded with containers. There's a theory. Here's Clash Report, which is an agency that, well, maybe people don't know about or don't pay attention to, but they're usually the first to take photos and videos. So it's an international agency. And apparently they're loading Patriot missiles there, supposedly Patriot Advanced Capability, 2 Patriot Advanced Capability. 3 is more modern than Patriot Advanced Capability. 2, that's what they have there for the Patriots. In Tel Aviv. Before that, there were quite a few military cargo flights to Israel yesterday as well. Some even to the same place. Gaza, and also negotiations with HAMAS hasn't given an official response yet. For 2020-21, Vitkov has 21, Trump has about 20 points. Well, these are the points for the ceasefire. Vitkov, who, well, I don't know, will he leave or not? We'll see. Maybe it's a rumor started by the globalist media that work against Trump. He said that if these agreements with Hamas in Israel can be reached, it will have a positive impact on achieving peace in Ukraine. And what do you think?
Yes, definitely. Yes, it will definitely have a positive impact if it happens, and I would like it to happen. Regarding Vitkov's departure, I absolutely don't believe it. I absolutely don't believe it. A lot depends on him, probably more than on anyone else in Trump's team. Of course, this is based on personal relationships. They are close friends in real life, and Trump wouldn't put, in a good way, so much responsibility on a person if that could just happen. No, and he did a tremendous amount of work, both on Israel and on Russia. They can't just force someone to do something in a single day. I mean, regarding Putin, the process of coercion has started, and with Hamas, everything will be easier. That's what I think. If they don't accept it now, then they just won't exist.
But we can also approach such conditions in the Ukrainian issue. Or are we moving toward those conditions that if, say, Ukraine doesn't accept them, or let's say hypothetically Russia, then they just won't exist? Conflicts, many people compare them to conflicts of irreconcilable contradictions.
I know who says that, and I strongly disagree. And we can't say that about Russia because Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads, or 5, whatever the number is. Well, in short, a lot, about as many as America. And that's why we can't talk about Russia like that, unfortunately for me as well. And that's why, by the way, Trump is now dealing with the very important issue of denuclearization. And many people thought it was a joke. There are serious talks with China, and hopefully Russia will follow. I doubt it, but I hope it happens. No, and no one will let Ukraine be destroyed. I've heard this before and will repeat it. Someone said on your broadcast in a clip I received that the situation in Gaza with Israel will go on forever and never change. And in Ukraine, it's not an unsolvable conflict. No, in my opinion, it's solvable both there and there. Of course, the Middle East is more complicated. I admit that historically and in every way. And here, it's just stupidity in our region.
Yes, friends, let's sum up the results of today's poll. With the continuation of the war at this stage, Zelensky will get a big one. Here are the results. 13% Kush, 17 Kukish, 31 Time Reserve, and 39, that's a collapse, a big collapse basically, just a bit more than the Time Reserve. Although one doesn't rule out the other, of course. What do you think?
I agree that it doesn't rule it out. But I'm in favor of having extra time, after all. That's the main thing. That's what I think.
Yes, Zelensky is buying time. Let's take a few questions from our audience that were submitted in advance, as well as questions that will come up directly in the chat. You can already write your questions for Denis in the chat. Denis, your namesake, Denis Smirnov. What's your opinion? How much time does Zelensky have left to lead Ukraine? And is there a chance that he might leave his post before the new year? Thank you.
No, many people already understand the question and want to. His power is already being stripped away layer by layer. You see how Yermak has quieted down, but for some reason people don't want to notice this? This didn't happen randomly. His power is being taken away gradually. They're sawing the legs off his chair, and sooner or later those legs will be completely worn down, cut off. That's why I think he'll stay in charge until spring. He'll remain in his seat, but his influence will keep decreasing.
So Alexandra has quite a stern comment. So Trump's statement about having the most powerful army in the world, given her habit of grabbing helicopter landing gear, and after years of fighting poorly armed opponents in sandals and a disgraceful retreat despite pouring trillions into the army, it looks more ridiculous than impressive. So, the top officials in the Kremlin keep talking about continuing negotiations under agreed conditions in Alaska. Lukashenko suggests agreeing to these terms, but the United States and Ukraine pay zero attention, and in the end, Russia is blamed. Are you serious? It turns out there's black and white in every thought.
First of all, it's not that the United States is against it, but the United States can't agree to something that would give Putin powerful advantages. And it would look like the United States lost. That's what the United States can't allow. The United States understands everything. And Zelensky, I'll say it again, he'll be pressured into what's needed, into a real compromise. About mocking the American army. That's the Russian person in a nutshell. When you come to America, Alexandra, you'll see how people live who aren't obsessed, even though they're definitely leaders in this, but they're not obsessed with militarization and building rockets. Because they can produce an iPhone, which you surely use as well, Alexander, and they assemble it in China. So what? That's called capitalism. I don't see anything wrong with that. You're an interesting person.
Look, the way people live and the way the army lives are two very different things. Actually, of course, I haven't discussed this situation with you in that way, but I want to stand up for Alexandra a little bit again. Look, Hegseth, if you look at it very objectively and plainly and just listen to Hegseth, he always says things like, we're powerful, we're the coolest. He basically dispelled this myth about the American army with all these transgender people and all these innovations that the Democrats have introduced over the past, 15 years or so.
He criticized the Democrats, he didn't criticize the American army, he criticized the Democrats. The previous approach, along with Trump, clearly made it understood that this will no longer happen. A real army will be built and many things will change so that what we are discussing today does not happen. There are skirts here, missiles there, and everything is being built quickly. But once again, I want to say, going back to Alexandra, you need to give something to civilization, to people for life, to be able to build. And where this is being assembled is another question. The money ends up going exactly where it should, to the right account, I mean in terms of the Apple Corporation and all the others. And what has Russia given to the world? What has it built for human life? You, Alexander, have nothing Russian at all, absolutely nothing. I'm sure you only use things from the West, just like I do. But I admit it and admire it. And you don't like that?
No, the question was about the army. Wait, no.
The woman said that they are just showing off, and for women it's only militarization. Here's a scarier missile. North Korea is a real nightmare, but they have a very scary missile there.
Did you see that drone? Wow, Kim Jong-un.
A drone or missile, sure, but a life. In one country, the nation serves its people, in another, people serve the state.
Vitaly, good afternoon, Alexander and Denis. The question is, Can we say that in the struggle between democracy, based on totalitarianism, and totalitarianism disguised as democracy, the trio of global investment funds has won? That's all. Thank you in advance for your answer.
These are parallel processes. You can't say one has won and the other has lost. These are parallel processes. Autocrats build autocracy. Funds, surely like BlackRock, are implied. They do their own thing, and all of this coexists together.
Oksana Bondarenko, in the morning video, Denis, you claim that wars are provoked. Putin Soros, while ignoring the United States admission of financing the Maidan with $5 billion. Rubio's words about a proxy war with Russia, the active supply of weapons during Trump's first term, as well as the deployment of bases in Ochakiv and biolaboratories. Do you think these United States actions are not provocations, or is it something else? How would the states react if Russia built military bases and biolabs in Mexico?
This is just Russian propaganda compiled by someone, but I'm prepared. So that's the problem. I keep emphasizing, they say the United States of America, Soros, but I explain that you need to separate these things. Back then, the United States of America was different. Now it's changed. The Maidan was organized by United States of America, International Development, and Soros. Essentially the same. But people just say, the United States of America, yes, you have to specify it was that administration at the time. Yes, Ukraine is a proxy in this war, but I want to reassure the woman, likely from Russia, that Russia is too. From China's side. And China too. Not just two, but China is number one. And right now, it also doesn't agree to peace in Ukraine. They want cheap energy from Russia. That's the main reason. So relax. Both Ukraine and Russia are proxies.
Todd asks, hello, if everything is ending, why are people frightened that war will be endless and that even with peace, martial law and mobilization will stay? Why?
But that's exactly the key point, even if the fighting starts to subside. And very seriously, Zelensky wants to continue the dictatorship. And now they're already looking for ways in the law to twist everything around so that the war is only on paper, not in real life, but the dictatorship continues, the closed borders continue. I'm not sure about mobilization.
There were statements that they would need to keep some kind of army there.
You see, right, that's why, of course, they want it that way. If anyone thinks that it's all over, complete freedom, for them that's a nightmare. They understand how it will end for them. No way.
That means a user clarifies this is the broadcast chat. Wait, the question just vanished. So, just to clarify, Vitkov has a temporary position after all, so that's why he has a temporary position here. So, when he finishes what Trump tells him to do, that's it.
Well, of course, right now he's a representative, obviously for a specific task.
Yes, so it's not like that here. Look, well, thank you very much. By the way, the user just left. Thank you for clarifying. And this is really important because people are spreading rumors like Vitkov was fired, that's it. It's just that he has a task, he went, took care of everything, and now he can be free. It's not a position, even in the sense of some kind of job title.
Not a minister or head of administration? Nothing to discuss or compare?
Giselle, the question is, Dennis, why negotiate with Zelensky if, as you said, he can't be trusted? Is it because he can be pressured and there are many levers of influence over him? Thank you.
Many levers of influence. I'll explain it to the person. Imagine right now they just took and threw out some compromising material and removed Zelensky. Who comes to replace Zelensky? It's a process. It's work. You don't need to trade a needle for soap. To be clear, the Trump administration doesn't need to swap a needle for soap. In order to put someone in place to help someone come who will be adequate, it takes time. It can't be done in 2 weeks. That's why the decision has been made to work with Zelensky now.
So, it's clear now, why can Russia make a tank but can't make a good car? Well, let's put it this way, these kinds of moments are for your remarks, yes, for life. Alexander Vaskovsky. So, is he clarifying or catching you out? Trump says it's not his war, so how can he lose it? Or is it actually his war and he can lose?
No, he can't lose. This is called complex politics, complex geopolitics.
But you say that he, well, in order not to let America lose in all this, in these agreements, so that Russia gets stronger, that's why he can't do it.
Trump will not lose. Trust me, Trump won't lose no matter what. Well, it's hard to explain to someone if they're not really following everything. Trump won't lose, America won't lose. We'll talk about this at the end. After everything is done, I'm responding to the person.
Botsman thanks the guest for an interesting conversation. Please avoid using derogatory terms like sovok. It's petty and disrespectful. That's the comment. Well, friends, thank you very much for appreciating this and writing your suggestions. It's really interesting. Whether the guest listens or not, or, well, I don't always listen to everything people write to me either, so that's how it is. Yes, so long-term contracts. So the Biden administration, Trump. Friends, well, I see you're interested in chatting with each other here, and your comments are interesting too. So Andrei Oklopkov asks, who destroyed production in Russia in the 90s? Clearly hinting at the United States of America and American business? What would you tell Andrei about it?
Russians, had nothing to eat, and America was providing humanitarian aid so that people could physically survive. And people like Andrei forgot about that very quickly. If, according to his version, the Americans were destroying production, then how did the Americans allow KGB agent Putin to come to power? Didn't he think about that? There was wild capitalism, the oligarchs took a lot, and things turned out the way they did. We're not revisiting loans for shares auctions and related topics. Let the Russians handle it.
Yes, that's right. This is interesting too. There, it's like, Alexander Denis, give your brief opinions, because it's obvious that Vitkov is the donkey with the gold, and Kellogg is the steel, and now Trump is sending them both off. Well, it's like from the saying that a donkey with gold can take cities, and now they've sent the donkey with gold into Russia. These projects, the northern route, the investments, and Kellogg, are like the carrot and stick, or the donkey and sword. So, what do you have to say about this?
Maybe that's just how someone explains it to themselves. Even then, I wouldn't call Vitkov an ass. These are just two different people, two different directions, both of which Trump needs, I repeat, for the right decision. But you see, Kellogg was still cut off from a lot during the negotiations. Basically, only now is he going to Kyiv, and there he can make some public appearances, but he is not present at the negotiating table with Russia, while Vitkov is. That's a big difference.
Oh, I really like the chat. It reacts so well. About the 90s, when you said there was nothing to eat, people immediately ask here about Bush's legs. Those chicken quarters finished off the production of chicken and eggs for many years, and then Russia was dependent on imports for a long time in general, and so the Americans weren't so innocent, and basically Russia was finished off. So, a question for Denis. Does he really think that it's presidents or the government system that make technological breakthroughs? Everything, or almost everything, is done by money. Let them take a look at who works in Silicon Valley.
I never said that it's done by the authorities or the government. I am a capitalist. All inventions are made by entrepreneurs who cooperate with the government. For example, people like Elon Musk and many others. And those who are now developing superweapons in top secret are also entrepreneurs, including some from Silicon Valley. This shows someone doesn't grasp money, they pay $100 and expect rockets, but it's people who make it happen.
Sergei Kromov asks, why has Ukraine chosen public relations and presenting wishful thinking as reality as its political strategy, just like the United States has been doing lately? What do you think? Why?
Ukraine? They're asking why Ukraine?
Ukraine. Well, yeah.
And what can Zelensky do besides public relations? That's the point. He can't govern the country in any other style except authoritarianism, dictatorship. Otherwise, he just won't manage. He simply can't do anything else. He physically can't. He's not capable. It's the same here. Yermak's thing is that everything is bad, but you go out saying, we're the best, we're reformers, everything is great and will be awesome. All their employees are told to do this. I just know it.
Who brought Putin into the family? Asks Moshe Israelovich.
One of the Russian oligarchs.
Right. Anton writes, how did gross domestic product grow 20% annually under Stalin? Is it possible to have a smart answer besides free labor, or is it better not to answer this question at all? Anton Kuzmin, the gross domestic product under Stalin grew by 25%.
Yeah, everything was so successful. It's just me, Anton. Yeah, Anton. Open an American movie from the early 80s and you'll see convertibles with red leather interiors, air conditioners, decent hospitals. And I was born at the very end of 87, and I still remember those Soviet-style hospitals in the early 90s. They were exactly like that. Don't give me that nonsense. Where does all this anger come from? What are you trying to prove? I've never met anyone in America, not even a Democrat, who hated Russia or Russians this much. I don't get the hatred toward Americans, but then I watch Ksenia Sobchak's channel, where she interviews Russian figures. The rapper imitates everything from the West, his clothes, style, wanting to be like a Western rapper. Some media personalities do the same, taking everything from the West, including movies like Homeland. A Russian version with Mashkov was made a few years ago. Well, the damned West, but we can't create anything without it.
Well, not exactly nothing. Of course, Russia has contributed something. A user informs the world about the multi-engine, multi-ton airplane Ilya Muromets. The helicopter led to the first bicycle with handlebars. The helicopter was invented by Sikorsky, a Ukrainian. There's also the question of how Ukrainian he truly was.
I agree.
You see, well, that's a big question. That's why this is the tragedy of this confrontation, yes, and here, look, you can agree or disagree on the details with your answers. People do this, and it's good they write.
Of course, it's good.
And that they discuss things. But the main thing we can agree on is that, in a historical sense, this war is just stupid. It's foolishness.
Of course, of course.
I mean, to divide Vernadsky, Hrushevsky, an academician of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics Academy of Sciences, and to reshape all this and renounce what was literally with you just 100 years ago, and to call them great and to turn a blind eye like this to their belonging to the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union, and then to want to achieve something. And then we draw, excuse me, this is what I showed yesterday, or not yesterday, I showed this. In Ternopil, in a village, the museum director drew a black dumpling. The painting is called Black Dumpling. Malevich's black square. Well, a black dumpling, I get it. What a sad Ukrainian fate, you see, a black dumpling. That's why we need to move forward. This is something we can agree with, not that,
I agree. I'll add one more thing. Resist imposing your lifestyle on others. That's how Russia lives. I dislike Russia except for Moscow and St. Petersburg, but I don't interfere or tell them what to do. Live as you wish if it suits you. Just don't meddle with neighbors. Shoot anyone or force anything on others. That's it. Let every country live as it chooses, and there's no need to fight. If they like Stalin, if they think there was gross domestic product growth, fine, let them. Just don't impose it, don't go around with it, don't spread hatred.
It's a good example similar to the green agenda and non-binary issues. The same kind of absolute thing. Yes, we can agree with you.
This wasn't America, but a specific administration and globalists pushing an imposed agenda unrelated to Western civilization's values. No, and America doesn't like it either.
Yes, let's wrap up with this question. Good question, user Oduvanchik. And what does an adequate president mean for Ukraine? What should he change?
Well, in short, everything. Ukraine should be a purely capitalist country with the maximum level of personal freedoms, economic freedoms, the lowest taxes in the world, freedom of speech, and elections. I dislike some of your channel's guests like Artyom Dmitruk because I think they have a pro-Russian agenda. This isn't meant as an insult, it's just an example, but I'm saying he shouldn't be sanctioned, he shouldn't be kicked out anywhere. Let people like that also be part of political life and we'll defeat them in discussions, in debates. That's the difference. And United States Agency for International Development wants to cut off people like me, for example, and Putin also wants to cut us off. It's interesting, in the end, globalists and Putin use the same methods. Power usurpation, no freedom, no elections.
Well, today some news came in that There is also a Russian writer, Dmitry Bykov, living in the United States. He was sentenced there in absentia. He didn't perform the functions of a foreign agent there. There's no label there. For this and for the strike on the settlement of Groza, that's when the Russians struck. I believe it happened in Kharkiv region. A funeral was struck. And him. With his comments, he kind of discredited the Russian army, and they judged him for it, and so on. But if you really think about it, listen, let's look at it objectively. Well, there's Bykov, right? There's this writer, yeah. He's already fled. He doesn't pose any threat to Russia right now, at this stage of the war. Maybe back in 2022, he could have done something. Yeah, those good Russians, when there was some kind of trend, but still, they're catching up with him. They're catching up with him, so it turns out people don't want to live, and that applies to our people too, just the same. So yeah, and you say like that you don't like some guests or you don't like someone else, but still, we had a great broadcast together. So, well, you shared your impressions.
I'm not saying you shouldn't invite them, but they already appear on other channels, so there's no need to exclude anyone from the political process. That's what I was getting at.
That's not what I meant, but people perceive it, well, just like that, exactly the same way. So yeah, Zelensky wrote a bunch of these sanctions, right, specifically, and people are like, wait, but for what? He imposes sanctions to strip assets, but here it's like sanctions for words, so just find other words to counter them. For example, Bykov is no longer taken seriously in Russia, and it's the same in Ukraine. You've started using canceling methods and are destroying people, so how are the warring sides any different? And when people shout, we're one people, Ukrainians get offended by that phrase. And now some Russians are offended too, because how are we one people? Just look at the actions, look at this approach, these machines, absolutely. And one is a bit older, Volodya Vladimirovich, and the other, Volodya Alexandrovich, is younger and boasts about being younger. But the essence remains the same in politics. That's what we've come to.
Unfortunately, I completely agree with you. And basically, I'm saying the same thing. Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. The only thing I disagree with is that it's possible. Sanctions to strip away resources, that's also terrible, that's wrong. In general, sanctions against your own citizens are monstrous.
Yes, Denis Eliseevich was my guest today. Thank you for your time and thoughts.
Thank you.
Friends, thank you all very much for watching this broadcast. Share what you agree or disagree with. Note, Eliseevich is this, Shelest is that. What do you understand? The main thing is, don't forget to leave a like, or go ahead and leave a dislike. Most importantly, thank you for joining our live broadcast. Wishing you kindness and light. See you next time.